game of hanged man. Very good. I'm gonna make an introduction.
As you prefer, but we can go with the
Okay.
game first, as you prefer.
Alright. There will be a proper slide with the name of the text and etc.
Yeah.
So just an intro to get everybody in the mood for talking.
Okay.
S.
S.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here. Yeah, that's it. That's one there. Usually people start with A, but I go.
Yeah, I know, but you know, I leave the vowels to others, so.
With practice. E. There's more ways.
Yeah.
D.
Getting easy.
H.
Wait, I forgot one. H.
And
Oh, this is totally, wait. I made a mistake here. Now it's okay. B?
B.
B for ball.
B for
Okay.
bad.
Okay, this is now, come on guys.
I.
Okay. Then we got it. It's the body, that's.
Text.
Texas.
Oh,
Is a police.
okay, there was, everybody thought it was test, but an S?
No.
Yeah?
No,
Yeah,
no, I was thinking about it.
Text, okay, half and half. Okay. That's it for the silly bits. No, I'm joking, there's another silly bit. How do I, wait, hold on, I want to put it in the visualizer maybe? No, I don't think that's it.
What are you
The
trying to
presentation mode? Ah, no,
Sure.
presenta.
Ah,
Yeah, there you go.
Correct.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, it's the body text. I wanted to bring something that I found on the internet. When I started reading the text, I immediately was reminded of this discussion. I am not a Twitter user, I'm a Tumblr user since like 15 years ago, but often people post Twitter threads on Tumblr, so this is how I found it. The person posted this Twitter thread on the left. Originally, this person named Richard Duffy said, "There is no meaningful definition of woman. The only people who want it is strictly defined, seem to want to do so in order to use it to exclude people." And then this person, Graham Linehan, retweeted and added, "Women might like to know that there are a significant number of woke dudes who think this is true. There is no definition of woman. Fucking hell." Then a person called Avery Addison added, "Graham, could you please define chair for me in a way that includes all things which are chairs and excludes all things which aren't?"
Mhm.
And then he replied, "A separate seat for one person, typically with a back and 4 legs. Happy to help, but try Google next time. The definition of woman is in there too."
Mhm.
To which Mikey D replied, "Chair," with a picture of a horse, because it does have a seating for one person with 4 legs and a back. And then after this was posted on Tumblr, Tumblr user posted the picture, the painting below. It says very small, "The spirit of Diogenes is alive and well." And the painting depicts that scene of Diogenes with the plucked chicken, because allegedly someone said, "Oh, the man is a biped without fur or feathers." So Diogenes allegedly plucked the chicken and went around saying, "Behold a man." So this will be the idea. Lastly, someone on Tumblr added, "This is funny, obviously, but even if you don't go to the extreme of the example above, this is a separate seat for one person with a back and 4 legs," the picture below, "but it's not a chair, it's a bar stool." So kind of the opposite of the horse. The horse fits the description, but it's not a chair. And the chair also, the other also fits the description, but is also not a chair. But however, these are all below, all chairs, and they all lack at least one of the definitions of chair that Graham said. And the person finishes up saying, like, it's almost like strict definitions are always exclusionary. And then I found this brilliant because it's just people talking on social media, and it reflects quite a lot of the discussions in this 30-year-old text that we are talking about today. And also sometimes social media discourse can be delicious, I think. I think this is one of those instances. So yeah, let's go. Also, besides that social media text that I find delicious, I also found delicious this text that, although being quite, some ideas are kind of like, yeah, sure, we know, but it's a 30-year-old text, so let's give it the merit it deserves for its time. I wanted to make a small overall summary of what happens in this text for those who didn't read it. So basically, Butler has some critiques about some older philosophers. She starts mentioning some ideas of Aristotle regarding matter and form, regarding how man is usually seen as form and women as matter in Aristotle's text, and the idea of the soul being the actualized potential of matter. She also criticizes the idea of, and I don't know if criticizes, but she mentions that maybe Foucault was drawing a bit from Aristotle, and he also mentioned that the soul can be a prison. This idea of the soul being actualized in the body, I guess. And she mentions that it's relevant to think of the soul as a mechanism through which we train and shape the body into some idea that, of course, rests in ideals that are prescribed by history and culture. And yeah, I guess we all are pretty familiar with that. Then she brings this text by Luz Irigaray, or Irigaray, I don't know her provenance, from 1932. And she mentions specifically the things that this author talks when she's criticizing Plato. And she says that in these more ancient philosophers' texts, usually the idea of women is almost a catachresis. There is no idea of women, basically, or it's wrong, or it doesn't exist. Or it's simply the idea of a copy of a man, which reminds me also in Catholicism, the idea that the woman came from the ribs of a man. So this notion of men coming first, coming like, again, form, and women coming from it in a certain manner, I think doesn't come only in ancient Greece, comes from many different ideas and cultures. And then Butler also mentions this texts, two types of matter, the idea that it can be either phallogenocentric meaning making, so you are interpreting on the basis or around the idea of a phallus of men and manhood, or you are just using, I mean, specifically about women, so you're interpreting women around men, like the first criticism of Plato, or you are just misusing women and entirely. So it's just a speculation of a woman is, and it doesn't have probably a lot of truthfulness or relation to reality. At least these are the critiques that Butler is citing of Irigaray's critiques. She spends quite a while discussing these things, but we can just like summarize it, that she comes in to the idea that there is this matrix, this imperative, that the world is divided into these two sides. And of course, this is not necessarily like, not a reflection of reality. We just constructed it that way, so we can deconstruct it. This is what she is saying. I think this idea is pretty well understood nowadays. Of course, users like our dear Graham probably don't get that. Most people on the internet, on Twitter, do not get that, but I think in academia, in our spaces, it's safe to assume that, yeah, we're aware of this construction and its problems. Again, some key ideas of the text that are kind of pretty obvious for us today. The idea that sex does not exist prior to the formation of the subject. This heteronormative worldview that sex and gender are causal, so gender is caused by sex, so this is just a worldview, not, again, a straight, direct reflection of reality. The idea that sex is an identity that follows from multiple sources, such as race and class, and vice versa, so race can be, can follow on the basis of sex, and so the class, so yeah. Of course, again, and these things are seem very obvious. And then I started to remember some studies that I read recently, and it reminds me, okay, maybe it's not that obvious maybe for us here in the cultural studies little bubble, but so many works in AI especially are still struggling with this idea. For instance, I started researching, but there were so many, I didn't want to put a list of papers here because nobody's going to go after them anyway. So the idea that many models misgender women if they're not white. This is very common. So the aspects of femininity that are understood by these AI models, they are very reliant on race. Another thing,
Sorry, even visual.
visual images, visual images, like face recognition. Yeah, not AI in general, specifically face recognition software that misgenders women who are mostly Black or Asian, or men who are Asian also. So it's very common. Another thing that that got me thinking is are you familiar with the term TERF? The yes. Trans exclusionary radical feminist. In this community, ideas of womanhood are also very racially exclusionary. So when in social media discourse, it pops up in sports, usually the accusation of women, sports women being transsexual, and 90% of the time, these women are not white as well, especially Black women, Black women. So yeah, it seems pretty obvious, but we as a society kind of still struggle with this idea of sex and race and class and how they are intertwined. So Butler is still relevant for many people. I also wanted to highlight some things that I think were new to me, at least, or at least the way that she put them was new to me, something that I never thought. And I thought that these were the key takeaways for me personally from the text, the things that I find that can be a good basis for this discussion, for this seminar. First, the idea of this material irreducibility of sex, the idea of how materiality is a sign of irreducibility. So if something is material, it is irreducible. Why is that? How is that? How did we arrive into that? Is materiality a place that is excluded from the process of construction because actually it's the place on which we construct, or through which we construct? So if sex has cultural connotations, it cannot be a cultural connotation because it is a material thing. So if material is a place, thus it's not construction, is somewhere where construction happens. I found this reflection very pertinent. The idea that to deconstruct matter is not to negate it or to do away with the usefulness of the term. I found it very funny when she put it like that, like when we reduce, when we try to deconstruct things, we don't want to reduce to linguistic stuff. And I don't know, but I feel like sometimes when I'm reading other works or conferences, sometimes I feel like people in our field are kind of reducing to linguistic stuffs. And I like to keep a bit like grounded, a bit in context. So the way that she put it here, like yes, let's deconstruct it, but that doesn't mean that we're going to say, okay, matter does not exist. So I found it an interesting reflection. Another quote that I liked to be material means to materialize, where the principle of that materialization is precisely what matters, like what is meaningful about that body, the very intelligibility, the way that you understand a body. And the Aristotelian pun, she calls it, that to matter can mean both to materialize, to actualize, but also to mean, to signify, to be important, to have importance. I found that this is also like, it only works in English, kind of. I don't know if only in English, but I know that in Portuguese it doesn't work. I don't know if, does it work in Italian, this one? Doesn't really.
Not really.
No.
But it works for her text, but I don't know if how far we can get with this play of words in other
I did
contexts.
I remember that a few days ago, Massimo organized a conference. It was in honor of Ugo Volli. Actually, it was a play on words, excellent matters, but the only way was to use English, in the
Yeah.
title, because actually we cannot.
Doesn't work in other language, right? Yeah, but it's still an interesting fun, even if we cannot use it in other linguistic contexts. So again, right, the body is signified prior to signification, I mentioned. But wanted to bring it again, because if this is true, then this idea, she says the representation of status of language, right? The idea that signs follow, signs are mirrors of the materiality, then language is not mimetic at all if the body signified prior to signification, because it is productive and constitutive and performative. I think that this alone, this idea, like the two first dots, I think we can talk a lot about that. And if we agree, and exactly like how did she arrive at this conclusion? I don't know, many questions. As the signifying act, the one about signifying the body, right? The first one, the first act, delimits and contours the body that it then claims to find prior to any and all signification. So you're constructing it and saying that you found it already constructed. And then can language simply refer to materiality? Don't we kind of like construct it as we refer? Also, big question. Is language, or is the condition under which materiality appears? We get very philosophical there, maybe a bit further away from semiotics, but semiotics is kind of linguistics with philosophy anyway, so I think we can go there if we want to. So yeah, are we just representing materiality, material things, or are material things just appearing because we're representing them? If nobody's in the forest and a tree falls over, does it make a sound? Again, the idea of a matter being something to mean, to be important, right? The body is only understandable if it means, right, if it's matter. A reminder of the doubleness of the matter, of the question of materiality, which means that there may not be a materiality of sex that is not already burdened by the sex of materiality. Again, this cycle. The presumption of a given version of matter, right? Because it's constructed, it has possible ways of being. And when we're talking about the body specifically, this gets a little less abstract. So the versions that a body of a woman can take, when we have a presumption of this given version to describe the body of a woman. So we're describing a woman with already a presumption of what a version of a woman is. This prefigures what will and will not appear as a real woman, as an intelligible body of a woman, which also seems pretty obvious, but she puts it in a very precise way and in a very linguistic, semiotic language that I appreciated. I'd never read anything written specifically in this way. So yeah, we have a presumption of something, of a version of a physical thing, and then when you use it to describe a thing, you are already excluding all the things that don't fit this presumption. And then we fall into the normative status of body that I was referring to when I talked about the TERF community and the status that they have for the body of a woman that doesn't encompass many other forms or other versions of women in the world. As a set of normative criteria, as it forms this matter, this question of bodies, there's people outside peeking into. You find it interesting to participate? He was like reading the slides, sorry. So we have a set of normative criteria that form this signification, like this question of what are bodies. And such criteria, we can think about them as two things, as epistemological impositions on bodies, right? Normative, or also as specific social regulatory ideas by which bodies are trained, shaped, and formed. So you're not born a woman, you are made a woman, all of those things. Bodily form is not simply an imposition on already formed bodies, but part of the formation of bodies. So maybe we can argue that there are no such thing as already formed bodies, period. The very concept of matter preserves and recirculates a violation of the feminine. I do not understand that quote. What does she mean with the violation of the feminine? I don't know, we can discuss that. Maybe you can shed a light, because I read it many times when she mentions, right, how then this concept, if we're talking about matter as a physical thing, as a materiality, how then it always is also in itself a violation of the feminine. I think of many ways that this can happen, but like always, if we're is she seeking to deconstruct matter? But then how do you conceptualize violation if you already deconstruct everything? And then, yeah, that's also a problem that she puts when you're talking about these issues. If then you can lose sight of actually what is violence and what is violation of a body if you lose the sense of what is a body. So I think I get a bit lost here on this last one. So, is the body a text? Boom. I told you it was short. I didn't want to talk for 2 hours alone, so talk with me, please.
Thank you, Heidi, also for doing everything you introduced, That's fantastic. No, thank you very much also because of the change of plans. So thanks so much. Yeah, actually, you pointed out all the reasons why I decided to include this text. I really enjoyed it. In the seminars, it's not strictly speaking a semiotic essay, but still it is very semiotic in the way Butler defines matter and questions matter in the body and so on. And I thought it was also very important to cover the gender dimension, let's say, is related to the body. And here we have Christina and Susanna. We're all interested in these issues, but so I'm looking forward to their thoughts too. And also because, of the idea of deconstructing the matter, especially in view of the material turn, and, some movements that are getting very important in philosophy and in semiotics too. And, well, I open the floor to discussion, then I have my notes, but yeah, as usual, I leave the floor to others before.
Is the body text?
Well, I'm breaking the ice. No, on the very point you told us that you are a bit lost, the violation of the feminine.
A bit.
I'm not sure I can tell you this, but well, a while ago they asked me to review a paper for a philosophical journal. In fact, it was very interesting because it's gonna be published, so I think I can say, so it was a very good one. So And it focused starting from Butler and, similar text. It was a reflection, it is a reflection on how, the medical look establishes, the body and the feminine body especially. Let's say, building on the very idea of matter, because they say, that you have physical, material patterns that are related to the feminine and material patterns that are related to the masculine. But then, technology is changing, and so they are questioning this way of working on focusing on, supposed material aspects that define that. And I see that Christina is, acknowledging what I'm saying. So I think that we can read that in this perspective. That I don't know. Maybe Christina also worked on these issues, right? I think you worked on these. And so I think that you can point to that, and especially you can see that nowadays that we have technologies that actually show, that it's not a material or physical issue, but it's a look. Actually, it's the medical look, it's the machine, some criteria. So I think that we can think of that part as,
Right. It makes sense, I read some, I don't know if studies would be the idea, but some ideas from the medical field of trying to implement, instead of the idea of feminine and masculine or intersex or trans or cis, when you are filling a medical report, instead of any of these categories, just focusing on the organs you have. So you have a uterus, you have breasts, no, because you might have a uterus and no breasts. You might have had them removed, whatever gender you are, right? So that's also an interesting way to do away with the category of femininity altogether. But would this be good also? Like, it is important as identity for so many people. So, like, should we? But in the medical realm, maybe in the medical realm, the identity, feminine or masculine identity or whatever else, it doesn't help for medical diagnosis. So maybe having a list of your organs.
Yeah, that actually they have a huge problem with, I don't know, hermaphrodite.
Intersex.
Yeah, because they cannot, even when, generally when I explain the semiotic square to students, I use, it's masculine, and so you have, Yes, because actually it's both. You have angels, but it's neither, and then you have
Intersex,
which is both. And then, that actually questions, the category, but it's sort of this exception, to the rule in that look, and that's why.
And the intersex example is really interesting, because it also shows when you look into medical history, most intersex children, when they are born as newborns, they go through surgery.
Yes, because they have
the refusal to accept this category that doesn't fit inside the binary is also scary.
It's a wonderful movie dealing with this. I think it's XXY. It's something.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
Argentinian one, Lucia Bonso. Super nice.
I'm gonna write that down, because.
Yeah, but actually the category of gender itself started to be implemented for medical reason, and actually for facing the problem of intersex persons. I mean, in the 50s, I guess it's in Gender Trouble that Butler makes the history about the concept. Is it in Gender Trouble? I don't remember, but in another text though. And yes, the first implementation of the category for the reason to define which was the category for intersex persons. So gender was used for that. It's today that we have opened the category for performativity, autodetermination, and whatever. But actually started for a very specific coercive medical aim.
Yes.
So the violation is that one.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it can also be considered that, I mean,
can also
the violation itself, but it's more in general. Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Oh, well, let's go philosophical. Let's go.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how Judith Butler, I think, does prepare everything for the material turn. So the concept of performativity, then how it's been used through time. So now all I was thinking reading this was like the material discursiveness of Karen Barat that does like resolve like that. All of this like saying, okay, there is no point in doing this kind of distinction, because if you don't know her, she's a physician and she studies quantum physics. And so she discovered like how those small particles do some queer things, like very strange, like things, the entanglement phenomenon or things like that. And she's building on these philosophical discoveries, theorizing how the nature also is performativity. So not only gender, not only what Austin said about the words, the performativity of words, then we have gender, and then we have nature with Karen Barat. So there is this like materialistic evolution that, if we think about that, how is it right now in those kind of theories, this doesn't matter anymore because there is this fusion of what is materiality and what is signification and discourse. And I think this is very fascinating, and I don't know how to deal with it in a semiotic point of view. At least I think what I'm trying to do in my research in general. But yeah, I think that is, I don't know if it's a starting point or an arrival point. I don't know. But yeah, the quantum physics.
Yeah, tell me again the name of the book from the physicist.
Meeting
The
the,
first book is Meeting the Universe Halfway, and it's from 2016, I think, or something. Meeting the Universe Halfway, where she's theorizing the performativity of nature.
And the movie was this one, right?
Thank you.
yeah, Lucia Ponzo.
Oh, okay, you know the name of the director?
Yeah.
Paul, like this?
Ponzo. Ponzo.
As that.
Yeah.
Okay.
N. Okay, you will find it.
Yeah. Sure. Awesome. We still have so much time.
Do you agree with Susanna?
Oh, who am I to disagree? I study politics. I study red pills and far right and neo Nazis. Quite the opposite. I have a lot of insights into the minds of people who do not think about this at all. Actually, this was the funnest, most fun part of reading this text, was stepping away a little bit from my digital humanities, linguistic, computational, yes or no, it either works or doesn't, to read something more philosophical a bit. It was like, oh, right, I have this part of my brain. I forgot about it. It was a bit forgotten. Yeah, so it was fun.
Yeah, actually, if I, okay. I'm curious about, one of the first things you mentioned, that it's, about AI and, this racial, configuration they have, 'cause I didn't know about that actually. I know that there are a lot of, biases, but related to language and gender. I didn't know about, let's say gender and race, if I can put it that way. What about Asians? That's my curiosity, because that Asians are shaping AI models. So I'm wondering whether this applies to
I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was a bit old because I couldn't find exactly which. I don't remember if it was this page. I remember mostly, I remember it was not on AI generation. It was on AI on face recognition, not generation. But I remember that the two.
Yeah, I remember
Main
a
result.
presentation, but
If you want, I can help you.
Yep.
If you want, I can help you. No, okay. Of course, okay, we can speak in terms of intersectionality, no? Because this is the main, let's say, horizon of the problem. And maybe there is a problem about intersectionality both for infrastructure and both for the design of the infrastructure. So even though, for example, as you just said, Asian people, they develop a lot of infrastructures.
Still based on.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. The training
Okay.
of the
That
database
makes sense.
is
That's
more
very
based.
strange, and,
Yeah.
you know, because
But
you
for
are feeling
example,
it, you know.
it is very interesting because the first type of Tesla automated control system, they had as a task, for example, to detect if the driver was going to be, I don't know, tired or whatever. And they take quite a lot to fix the problem with Asian people because the system couldn't detect the physiognomy of the eye. So, I mean, and this is about, I mean, this case, it's, I don't know, about through 2 or 3 years, a problem that emerged through, no, 5, no, not even 5, 3 years ago, sì, tipo 2001, 2002, 2021, 2022. Yeah. And it became very famous because a PhD from the MIT, she was from an Afro-American descendant. She started to implement. Now I don't remember which tool for face recognition, and the system that the team at the MIT was working on couldn't detect her face because she was black woman. Yeah.
So I don't remember which was the study specifically that I read. I know that I didn't read the scientific paper itself. I read a news piece on the study, but it makes sense that the data that they are trained on, that the models are trained on, are not Asian, because I remember that one of the results, the characteristics that they were flagging, is that usually Asian men were being misgendered as women,
Yeah.
and Black women was being misgendered as men. So yeah, but still,
Well, that's
maybe it's a
astonishing,
bit old.
Yeah.
you know, the amount of people working on it and using them, you know, because they are already using
Yeah.
facial recognition in universities and everywhere, so,
Yeah.
you know, that's.
But I think there is an even more astonishing case, which is about, let's say, the more racial segmentation of the problem. And it came out in 2015 when Google Lens, with the auto tag tool, tagged as gorilla to Afro-descendant people. 11 years later, meaning today, now it's not called Google Lens, but it's Google Photo maybe. I don't remember the name of the application today, but Google couldn't still fix the problem, so they just decided to take off the gorilla tag.
So it won't recognize a gorilla now.
So, but
If it would
gorillas that
It would recognize, for example, primates.
Or a chair.
It would recognize a primate for a chair, of course, but not, yeah.
But what you mentioned, that people are using this technology a lot, but they're using it. But here's the thing: it's about gender classification, right? Because we're using face recognition not to classify gender. When I put face recognition on my phone, the only thing that the software has to do is match the positions of my features to unlock. It doesn't have to tell, oh, this is a woman or not. Just has to match.
They're using
Yeah,
that in
both.
order to train.
In China, you know, I can.
Yeah, they're using it to train, but they are clearly classifying it wrong. That's a thing. That's the thing. Because how are they classifying? On the basis of material characteristics, distance of eyes, sizes of eyes, distance, the size of nose, size of ears. So this is, are they?
That and much more.
And much
because
more.
also the lume of the whatever, like the aura, let's say.
Presence of makeup, I don't know, other stuff, illumination, and this is inputted as code, And that's where the mistakes are happening, right? No, it's not. You said no.
No. I didn't understand what
No,
you said.
I mean, because as I see it, there are different ways that we can train AI, right? We can do like a bunch of examples. So we put people to see picture and say female, male, female, male, and then you feed that to the computer and let it extrapolate the patterns of what is male and what is female. Or you can actually input the patterns in the code and say, okay, males usually have smaller eyes. So if I sphere bigger than she's X centimeters, right? So if you are actually writing this, then you can make serious mistakes in classification. But if you are letting the model extrapolate the patterns, then it's a problem of how people are categorizing images. Then it's more a people problem, perhaps. I'm theorizing from what I know of training AI, because I'm currently working with training AI for text, not for image. So maybe it works different with image, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. If there's a ton of people in the south of Asia working to train these models on seeing a picture and just like, okay, this is a guy, this is a woman, this is a guy, and they are making mistakes. And then the model's gonna have mistakes. But if we're already putting the patterns in the model, and these patterns are already biased as hell because a human being wrote them, then the problem is coming from a different direction, but it's also there. So the problem is coming from somewhere, and I just don't know exactly.
I don't think it's so. It can be described in that way, but I don't think it works
Probably
in that way. I mean, not in that manichaeistic way, because, for example, as a tool, gender recognition, which is different from sex recognition, has been progressively omitted by many face recognition systems. For example, Amazon, IBM, now I don't remember, but the major companies, they don't use it anymore because it's so fallible. I mean, it's so...
There's so many mistakes.
Yeah, so that, but the problem is that gender can always be can always be hypotized. And we have just designed machines that they cannot stop interpretate what they see, I was going to say what they see, but they don't see nothing, no? What they interact with, no? So can always be, so gender can always be presumed by something else, more than the physiognomic.
Yeah, the way they move.
Yeah. The look.
Yeah, the problem, I remember that Cristina made an incontro sul senso about some topics, and we talked also about the fact that why we want to overlook to other gender identities. I choose my own identity, and for the other, I ask themselves what they want. I mean, for me, the problem within this technology is always what we think they are useful for and why we want to use them. And probably there are other cases. I remember always Cristina wrote a good paper about this artwork querying the data set. I was using this idea of mixing genders, mixing images to create an artwork. And this is a kind of useful interactions with AI and with the image of people. But to recognize, to predict the genders of others, I think it's wrong at the basic, not at the working, but at this base.
Yeah, but I think you nailed it when you said that, like, what is this technology for? Yeah, for us controlling wrong from basic, but there is use for this, right? Yeah. And then we get back to the idea of how bodies are trained, shaped, and formed.
Absolutely.
Great job, everyone.
If I can speak just a few minutes, I found that in this paper there was like a big philosophical and semiotic questioning that is somehow the relation between the materiality and the language, and the sex as a term between the two, no? And I don't know. The first thing that I thought was like the thing, the common aspect between these phenomenon is probably the idea of enunciation. Because Bruno Latour, in a paper in 1999, talked about different forms of enunciation, different forms of passages. And it was like the first one is the of inorganic matter, but the second one is the reproduction of organic matter, so vegetable, and then animals, and then in animals, humans that then creates technical objects, artifacts, and so on. So the technical artifacts are after the another kind of acts of enunciation that it's foundational for the others. So, but then I don't know how to relate these kind of ideas to the problem that Judith Butler highlights. And so I asked if everyone has other ideas. The fact that if we think about our evolutionary history, our evolution, there is a reproduction before even creating material artifacts that are the conditions of possibility for other kinds of more complex enunciation, like language enunciation, verbal linguistic utterances. So is this materiality foundational for the linguistic development of humans? And so how the linguistic developments interact and remediate these other kinds of already semiotic development in the reproduction of entities.
Okay, well, what do you mean by linguistic? That would be to answer this question. Like, what are you referring to specifically?
Yeah, the development of language in the history of evolution of human. But so probably for me, it's before the development of language, the development of the first techniques to grow and to make things, like to cut things.
So like technology?
Yeah, techniques.
Techniques, technique.
So going back to the question,
What is the interaction between the reproduction, which is already a form of enunciation, and the linguistic development,
technique, so we
technique and linguistic as a special technique.
When you say reproduction, you mean species reproduction? Or I get lost.
Yeah, the creation of the new entity by organic means.
By organic, okay, yeah, this is because of Latour. Okay, so
Did I get your question right? Kinda?
I don't need
So, like-
materiality of language, but
Materiality in general.
yeah, in accordance with material agency.
Okay.
So I think it's linked to what Susanna said earlier also. Of course, there's all kinds of metaphysical issues behind this, but for us as semioticians, I think that the key solution is simply to say that language is material, just like all the rest of
Absolutely.
material. This is an old dualism linked to idealism.
yeah,
Then we don't,
I like that.
the doctor didn't say that we have to accept this dualism, which doesn't mean that there's no difference between languages.
And reproduction of bodies.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Two kinds of reproductions.
So what is the text?
Yeah,
What is the text?
yeah, the text
But
is-
no,
Text
Bolli-
of the body, the
The
concept.
text is the body.
when Bolli made his last presentation for the Incontri sul Senso, actually he went back to that issue. I don't know if you remember if you were there, but he talked about sound and language.
Yeah.
That's why I think that was exactly on that point, basically, and what Michele was.
Yeah, and I don't know about fundamentalism or foundations, because maybe it's also a tricky concept. But when it comes to irreducibility, I think that both things are irreducible to each other. Meaning both have agencies, both can influence the other sphere. So just as languages can transform reality, also of course reality can transform the way we speak somehow. Which doesn't mean that languages are mirrors of nature.
Right. Yeah. we answered Judith Butler.
Result.
No, a real resolved.
Oh, well, it's true that in semiotics, especially, you know, at the beginning, there was the dichotomy that, you know, Luca and Michele were referring to, because there was the idea that, you know, the material part is not important. Abstract structures, you know, just because they were the important part.
Formal level.
Yeah. That's why I was referring to Ugo's, you know, talk, because actually it was focused on that, you know, for a while we've been working on, yeah, in this way, and then we have to abandon that kind of.
Yeah, I was reading these days from Charles Morris. I think it's kind of trying to do something like this, but from a huge structural semiotic foundation. So it's like kind of hard, but it's trying to theorize something like that. But also there is Trilly that is talking about what it's trying to do, and then also Sibiak with the global semiotics. But I think that what is trying to do is like to arrive to that kind of point, to see that language is material so that everything is semiotics, and it's talking about the concept of identity, to go back to Butler, that is trying to do this opposition between what is an open self and a closed self, telling that what is causing all the bad in the world is having this kind of closed self, like not open to the dialogic nature of oneself. That is to say that language is material. Always is like tautological, but no, to me that's it's the last point or the starting point is always that. The problem is what is in between, like the problem of not being able to embrace the dialogical nature of ourselves. So that is what Morris and also what semiotic in general is like trying to state.
The versus doctrine of man as a sign.
Yeah. That's what these kind of theories are saying, and I think it is the way in which semiotic is trying to be materialistic. I mean, it could be dialogic with the materialistic term in this way.
Well, at the time, Morris also was, maybe he was misread, or maybe not, but Morris was, he used the term behaviorism sometimes, which is the theory that was later rejected by, especially by Chomsky, who was the king, and now maybe now we should reread also Morris.
No, maybe the comportamentistic behavior thing is the one that maybe shouldn't be left aside. But
No,
I mean, I agree with the critic.
Next study group, Morris.
I was thinking about that, like, or Sibiak, but Morris is more classical, so maybe Morris is better.
I want to go back to your last question, if the body is a text, and maybe the relation between matter, sex, and language. And I was thinking about some practices, especially fetishistic practices, that we use like to mark our body as a system of differences. We use a lot of signs to mark our body as like a semiotic system, a semiotic structure or surface. This is important, especially the term surface, because the body doesn't have like an inner meaning or like a natural inner meaning, but it's something that works on a surface, like man as a sign we were saying just before. And so we use like bracelets, laces, stockings, but also tattoos to segment our body, to forming like a sort of grid, like a sort of semiotic form on our body. And this semiotic structure actually gives value to each of the parts that emerge or stand out through this form. Just like in semiotics, we cut the surface through a grid, and each part as a value, as a meaning, just because of that form that has cut that surface, that material surface. So in this sense, just like in semiotics, each part takes on a valorization, and precisely a phallic valorization insofar as it is erected, but also because it is cut or castrated. So we move from the classical psychological ideas to maybe like very normative, heteronormative idea of the myth of castration, for example. And so we move from the castration of the penis to the penis just because it's castrated, in a sense, just because it's cut. And so I think this kind of work that is a material work, a linguistic but also material work, can be useful just because it's fetishistic to subvert some naturalized idea of sex, of matter, of body, and also all the ideological hierarchy between male and female, between sexes, and so on. So it was just like an example of an idea, and how we can work both linguistically but also materially on our body, and how this work can meaning and matter both in the sense to materialize and make create some meaning about sex on our body, for example. Yeah.
But if you wanted to intervene, or
No.
if I may, yeah.
Okay.
You made me think about the work of Teresa de Lauretis when she recovered from Gail Rubin the definition of sex-gender system for describing what you just said. So in her case, it was the BDSM community in the US in the 70s, 80s. And the materiality of the body was the text of her investigation, and all the recalibration, divergences, I mean, whatever you can imagine implicated in BDSM as a form for, firstly, to not separate, taking together the materiality of both gender and sex, which is something that sometimes escapes. And it's very, tricky and complicated, even more today when we use gender as a synonym of identity. And I think this is another very tricky problem. And so Teresa de Lauretis, when she defined this sex-gender system, she used it for defining a semiotic of the experience. And I think that all these passages are very interesting, because at the end, the experience is material too, because of the gender and sex relation.
Yeah.
Teresa de
Lauretis.
Lauretis. Sex system, sex something system.
Sex-gender
Gender.
system.
Lately, I've been really getting into reading stuff from the kink community, and it's really eye-opening, like the ideas of how people behave, how to be a person, and it's really fun to read. Just like not so much as a scientist, but it's kind of hard to separate the science self from the neural self. So maybe I'm just watching kink YouTube videos and thinking about a paper that I'm gonna write. But yeah, but it's really, really awesome. While you were describing your idea of like this body being a text of texts or a sign of sign, it really reminds me of the concept of text for Lotman specifically, that a text is a text within a text. And yes, in this sense, absolutely, the body is a text, especially if you consider text as in the Lotmanian sense. I like that idea.
Another tricky concept in semiotics, makes me think to the relation between language and materiality, is manipulation. It's both something that works with hands materially, but also like an action that establishes a system of values.
Yeah, about that, I love how Butler described how he really tries to read and go through to study the whole history of philosophy, but without being manipulated,
Mm.
like trying to see what is not there.
Mm.
And I think like it's the opposite of what all the work the AI is doing with the data, like learn from data. She's doing quite the opposite, like trying to learn from what is missing, and I think it's really
Super nice.
fascinating.
Super semiotica.
Everything that is cut out.
Yeah.
I know that Simona already commented on this, but now that we have broken the ice some more, why I still have didn't understand, as you said also, the quote about matter being constitutively phallocentric or something like that.
Wait,
Not only not phallocentric, but maybe
wait. Here? No.
no. You also said that you. Yeah. Last
Yes,
one.
that one.
Right there.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
The last one. The
Because-
troubling one.
Mhm. Also, you refers not to matter, but to the concept of matter too. So
The very concept. Let's
I
go
was
back to
actually
this.
looking for definitions
difficult
on
one.
online dictionaries. I'm trying to.
Maybe we can go back to the passage in the paper, no? And not just the
Yeah, I
sentence.
don't have it
I-
here
I-
right
I-
now, but if someone does, we can.
Because you uploaded it today, no?
Yes, they are on, yeah, on Drive, but I can, sure I can share it.
So we can do something that philosophers normally do. We can read together and comment it.
Usually what we try to do is the study groups, the
Yeah.
study group sessions that we stopped for some reason and we should go back to doing.
Yeah.
Before I leave.
Com'è che era la frase? Can you just violate?
Matter,
The very concept.
perpetuates, preserves and relative play.
The very concept, okay. Okay, sì, aspetta che
Yeah, it's actually a bit different.
Mm.
It's page.
I might have changed
54.
it.
Yeah.
I might have changed a bit to fit the slides.
Page 54. Let's see if I can share it, but yeah, it doesn't allow me to, don't know why.
The paragraph formless femininity.
Yeah, if we go for the beginning of the paragraph, it's very clear.
Heidi, if you want to go back to WebEx,
Oh,
I think I
there's no
shared it, I'm not sure, okay, yeah.
Great, fantastic.
Ah, grandissimo.
So it mentions a prior violation.
Yeah.
Uh,
You see it's here and the following page. Let's see if I can show it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting how it continued the phrase, no? When we consider that the very concept of matter preserves and recirculates a violation and then invoke the very concept in the service of a compensation for violation.
When
No.
it's to reproduce.
Exactly, we risk, exactly, we're under risk of reproducing the very injury.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. When I took it out of context.
And like try to giving like biological condition of some
Yeah.
medical problems that have never been interesting in female body.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
it's
Makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Indeed.
because the feminine body was before erased from this perspective, material discourse, so if you try to use biologism to justify something.
And then it makes sense to
From the beginning, it's like.
go to that idea that instead of treating people as a woman or a man, you just look at the body that the person has and
Mhm.
treat that.
I think, yeah, maybe it was a little bit out of context, but so conceptually it works. But if we take the word, the material, linguistically, I don't think I still agree with you that the conclusion is not completely reasonable. Yeah, because from dictionaries or encyclopedia, I don't see necessarily that the violation the first violation that she's referring to attached to the concept necessarily. Material is very neutral to me. I'm trying to
It
take in
seems
context
like-
the way it's used.
It seems like she is trying to do away with the category, not do away with per se,
Well,
but
I cannot think of a context where you can use the word in that way.
maybe she wants to take a little bit of the weight off of the materiality, and we're here saying, no, language is material, material is okay, let's embrace material. And
No, okay,
we're
but-
kind of going in a different direction than her here. a bit.
Right. So, no, but I mean,
I think that's okay also.
I mean, if you look for the definitions in dictionary, the first 10 concern physics. So materially, maybe it would have been a little bit different with nature, probably.
But-
Naturality, but material.
But materiality is always positioned, it's always framed.
Yeah, also if the definition you can find seems like neutral, it's also as a history, so
Yeah.
it's not.
There's no such a thing as
It's like, we can think something similar with language. Like, when she's trying to deconstruct all the history of philosophy, basically it's just like saying that in language, if we think about the inclusive language, there is this debate, there's this debate, because the structure of language doesn't imply,
Yes, but it's not the same thing.
I think it's quite similar actually, because you don't necessarily, language wasn't so obvious that it wasn't neutral, because like it's an instrument you're using in this way. When you say human, when you say man, you may mean everything. This is how it works, but it's not natural. So I don't know, it's tricky.
Language, though, you're saying.
Yeah,
Agree-
with
agree.
materiality,
Materiality.
it could be quite the same.
I don't see why. I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, linguistically, the meaning of the word material.
Yeah. Yeah, but even saying linguistically, okay, the language is not a neutral system. So it's like I don't think we can escape this. So we can find the neutrality.
But if you think of a context where you use the word material, and its usage is used in an exclusionary way, I really have a hard time finding this context.
Within exclusionary way.
No, or in a phallocentric way,
Okay.
or in a way that is a violation, as the text is. I just cannot imagine.
I think it's the projection of a look again, because now I'm looking for definitions. Like matter is defined as any physical substance that possesses mass and occupies a space. That's the definition. And then you have material, which is kind of similar. It's more related to objects actually having matter, actually. And yeah, but basically, I think that you have to read that, as
I
a
distinguish
word
conceptually.
that you have to- yeah. But I agree with you that basically the term as it is kind of neutral. I think it's not that, any physical substance that possesses mass and occupies a space.
Yeah, like Papa.
But then we say that language is material, language is not a
Yeah.
substance, it doesn't occupy space.
Yes, still it occupies space, if you write, you are occupying, the space of the page. If you speak, you are occupying.
But it's still not a
space,
substance, though.
There is a substance, well, not in semiotic, then we go to substance in semiotic terms.
Oh, I don't think it can occupy space, but it does, when we were just talking, just like vibrating air, the air is already there. Language.
But you are
vocalization.
occupying, a part of the air. I mean, if you think of the radio and how it works, yeah, because the space is, that space is limited and you're.
But that's not physical thing. No, right now, I'm not talking through radio, it's just vocalizations, is air. Air agitation. The air is already here. Is the movement?
Yeah, not sure,
No.
because I don't know the physics of.
But I do. But I do have a word.
How to say.
Oh, that definition of matter does not include
That's what
language.
you are the ones.
I'm with you. Any definition is
Well,
excluding.
yeah, I mean, so the relation to context also is also important, changing a little bit my point. Because, if you think about it, the most male and masculinistic thinker maybe in the history of thought was an idealist, so the opposite of matter, which is Hegel, for example. Or, for example, we learn from Latour himself or, Dewey, that there was a time when matter was considered the less important thing, differently from modern times maybe, with the scientific revolution. But for ancient Greece, matter was something for women, for slaves, while real men were, their job was reflecting and contemplating, ideas. So I think it's also contextual, while here it says that the very concept of matter is a violation and so on. So,
Yeah, that's,
if you see
that's why she's trying to do the history of matter to see how it was not neutral because it was perceived in many different ways and it has been evolving through all of these male big thinkers. I don't know what was the point saying.
as I read it, there's no, she does, in this very passage, it doesn't say our notion of matter today, but
Okay, I see what you mean now.
the
Okay,
concept of matter.
okay. Wow. To consider the
I
text
don't know,
as the-
maybe you-
Me, probably I'm more stupid, but I'm still struggling also to understand the discourse before when she said that Plato's discourse on materiality is one which does not permit the notion of the female body as a human form. But I don't know if in Plato there is not the existence of women as human form. I don't know, I'm not an expert on Plato, but I find it very hard to think about.
Well, actually, the whole discourse about the Cora, the Cora,
Yeah.
like for him, the femininity was like this pure energy, like in this meaning without form. Like,
Yeah.
It's like the masculinity was the idea of forming the unformed
Okay.
Cora. So I think this is what the theory of Plato is trying to say in this context.
Then so the philosophical move is to take the Plato's idea of materiality and to say this idea of materiality represents perpetuates a constitutive violation of the feminine, but not the definition, the idea, the concept of matter in which Judith Butler reads. The concept of matter in this time is different from the context of matter in the Platonic
Yeah,
period.
it is, but.
And probably this was also the thing that you were trying to.
Well, I have to
I
read
would
the
think,
first part.
no, but I still have to think about it. I'm not sure. Probably wrong.
But that's the beauty of philosophy. There's no right and wrong.
No,
Probably not wrong, you just haven't
Nothing about it, a phrase, I mean, maybe, yeah, we should have.
No, but I wasn't criticizing Judith Butler.
No, I get it.
But you can, it's okay. It's fine.
Originally, I wanted to, I don't know which verb to use. I wanted to say that maybe it was not so out of context. Originally, then.
For sure.
Come è stato tradotto in Italiano? Oh, I was translated in Italian, Bodies That Matter.
Non è stato
Che
Ah.
contano.
E poi vi contano, non l'ho tradotto.
well, the version my version of the Italian book kept the title in English. Yeah. But maybe there is a version that is
No, there could be another version, che contano, I don't.
Perché
like,
I was thinking about the Spanish translation, and I was wondering
What
about the
is-
semantic of matter, not to continue thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't really work in any Latin languages, I think.
No, not even in Spanish.
okay, it was translated.
Colpi che
What
contano.
about-
Actually, in Italian we say materia also to describe.
Subjects.
Esatto.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
that's true.
It's not meaning.
It's not meaning, but it's something that is a
Mm.
topic, so.
Yeah, a topic.
Mm.
Same in Portuguese.
Look, I think for what were you asking, it's like she's saying that this concept Plato has of materiality was like wrong.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful to try to re-engage with materiality because the materiality itself is like, I forgot what I wanted to say. Yeah, but if we, sorry, I have to think again.
Write it down, write it down.
Yeah,
That's why I write
it's
everything
something
down.
complete, but now I lost it.
Parte da un punto medico, non semantico concettuale, legato al concetto di verità.
I think this is like the very concept of matter.
Sì, quella è
Sì, no, perché just to say that the problem with the materiality of Plato was that when we said that the materiality was something related to the femininity that was without form. But now also when we say materiality, we don't free ourselves totally of this idea. So if we try also to engage again with
We fall back.
materiality, yeah, we risk
back.
to preserve in this violation of the femininity and so on.
Right. That makes sense.
It doesn't make sense.
That's the essence.
It's a bit easier than what we thought it could be.
Yeah,
It
maybe.
seemed more complex, but then when you, okay.
Yeah, that's a bit possible.
Like it's a problematic concept given its history.
Yeah.
And then we use it again, we risk
Makes
falling back
sense.
and perpetuating the problematics of it.
It's like using the instrument of
The
the
master.
master to define the
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
That is the big question. Does it make sense when we need new instruments?
I really enjoyed this discussion. It was very nice. Maybe it's because I'm not able to participate very much in the other discussion.
Even though you speak perfectly.
Oh, yes, perfect.
Yeah, but anytime you're already speaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in English. Actually, you know, the PhD director just wrote an email that he wants to increase the English part of the PhD.
Oh, he could have done that for you.
We are.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I recently found out that I've been using the complete wrong word to describe like seminars and stuff to my landlady, so, because they're renovating the building. And she asked me, okay, so are you in home? And I wanted to say, no, I'm at the university at a seminar, and I've been saying palestra. Not the right word.
Yeah, because in Portuguese,
That I'm on the gym. That I'm so fit.
yeah, because in Portuguese,
It's
you say
palestra.
palestra.
And then I remember, Palestra Italia, the football club. Right, that's why it's a football club. Because in Brazil, there's Palestra Italia football club, and I was like, why the hell is it named Palestra? Now it makes sense.
She thinks he works in Paris.
Yeah, she thinks I work at a gym. So yeah, I would not like to rely on my Italian in our academic discussions.
okay, guys, so maybe we can stop here.
I think so.
Many thanks.
Thanks,
And we'll meet again for the seminar, so May 6th, I think, to discuss, some extracts from La Cura del Rico. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Only sometimes.